It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Jorge Cerda from Albany, to talk about education in AKI.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again, and thank you, Ravi, and everybody who organized this excellent meeting. So my subject today will be to quickly describe some of the activities that we're currently developing or utilizing for education in AKI. And we will try to go over these points throughout the presentation. So when one looks at the landscape of education and one is about to start a new program, one says, okay, why don't we look at what has already been published on education in AKI? So together with Dr. Hyung and Dr. Kao, we did a whole review for the last 5 years looking for what had been published and how many randomized controlled trials there were on education. The answer, of course, is none. And what education there was very little and generally created by nurses who are much better at education, it looks like, than physicians. So the number of published papers are very scarce. Papers are mostly descriptive. So we think that it is indispensable to promote and organize high-level evidence on the effectiveness of different approaches on AKI. Most commonly, we are now utilizing databases like the Cochrane Collaboration or Best Evidence Medical Education, linking primary research and systematic review knowledge with the application of that knowledge in practice. And most of the efforts at education work through the Kirkpatrick model, in which one goes from the learner's reaction to learning of skills and knowledge, to changes in behavior and the results of that opportunity. So it is a ladder in which you go from participation in educational experiences such as this to organizing programs that benefit the patients. Because nowadays, the education of the physician and the education for the specialist goes not just from knowing to being able to do, but also to, as you see on the right, to consistently demonstrating the attitudes, the values, and behaviors expected of one who has come to think, act, and feel like a physician. Generally, education involves utilization of review groups, like the AKI meetings, and we have gone through more than 20 of those, and we know that they generally consist of a review group, often affiliated with research assistants that diminish the craziness of the process. We need information and statistical experts, and generally having external advisory groups makes the results much more reliable to finally important publications that are read by everyone and that everybody follows. Sometimes science may be more fun during those AKIs that are in Hawaii, for instance, and then you get to, yes, create science, but also go to the beach. Within the AKI Now initiative of the ASN, we organized it into 4 groups, one leveraging basic science to treat AKI, education on new paradigms on AKI recognition, going from Ninja to AI, education on AKI recognition and management and AKI recovery, because those areas, although they are very complementary to each other, are quite different. And so each one of those groups has been extremely productive in number of papers, a number of presentations, including patients, not only physicians, and we have had the opportunity, for instance, to discuss artificial intelligence workshops, look at how the artificial intelligence coincides with what the machine does, and in the future, eventually be able to put the patient in the operating room and predict what will happen, and once the patient has had the surgery, again predict what the chances of that AKI or those complications will occur. We know that there are problems with artificial intelligence. One of the main problems is that the system does what it has learned, so we need to be careful what are we going to teach to that program, because the results can be biased. But nevertheless, we expect that this is going to have important impact on the outcomes. We have a basic science work group, and the idea is to create AKI as a working tool in which we are building an interactive platform where we will deposit and access shared databases and create a repository for data and educational resources by creating a large tent in which communication is the basis, so when you have one-stop shop, actual discovery, and educational content that can be shared and utilized by everyone. Also, we are giving an opportunity to medical students as well as physicians who never had an opportunity to work in a lab forever. They don't know the end of each one of the things that are there in the lab, and say, okay, here is your chance to participate and to be part, and maybe we will discover that many of those persons discovered that actually I was always a basic science and didn't know it, and participate in studies like this. So the idea is to open the door and to make everybody have an option. Especially because, as we know, what we're doing with end-stage renal disease is poor, right? If you look at the mortality of end-stage renal disease, the mortality is higher than all those cancers that are up there. So what we're dealing with is a deadly disease, and anything that we can do to diminish that mortality and improve the situation will be welcome. The recovery work group, and we had some meetings during this meeting discussing on recovery, has been very productive in the sense trying to lessen or totally abolish the development of end-stage renal disease, understanding that the discharge of patients who have had AKI is not simply telling the patient, now you go home, in part because they never go to home. Less than 50% of the time go to home. Most of the time go to the nursing home or are discharged, etc. So it takes a village to do this, not only involving the people in the hospital, but also, importantly, the family, the ICU nursing, the dialysis team, and we need to establish continuity so that what happened in the hospital is actually known in the outpatient dialysis. If the patient is under a very specific treatment, then that treatment needs to continue so that the results are better, and importantly, that the patient goes home. And also we need to talk with the primary doctor, because the majority of time, the primary doctor or the family don't know what happened and don't know that the patient had AKI. The educational work group essentially is working in going from normal to kidney failure and bringing it back, and understanding the time of the essence, so early recognition is super important. Right now, although we're working hard on that, we all know that early recognition is not the case and most of the time, so the fact that we're called to consult on the patient who has a creatinine of 5 in the ICU is a little bit concerning, because the patient has been in the hospital for 3 months, right? So that is the situation. Part of the problem is that there are multiple reasons that may explain confounding on AKI incidence, in part because it occurs in different scenarios. The ICU AKI is completely different from that in the rural settings, but in both places, early recognition is crucial. AKI may be transient and is often lost, and also AKI is diagnosed by trend. So until we get to a better way to diagnose, probably we won't be successful. And efforts like this, like Ras Bashu described, or personalizing medicine by utilization of different biomarkers that eventually will tell you that patient A is completely different from patient B, and why is the future. But we are stuck with what we have. This is one of the posters out here next door, in which, as you can see, after a study of pediatric children with AKI, kidney disease awareness and knowledge, most families of pediatric survivors of severe AKI, the family of survivors of severe AKI were unaware that their child had AKI. So we have a problem. Many lacked understanding of AKI risk factors and knowledge of kidney health and desire more information. Hopefully they got it. So where do we need to focus our AKI education efforts? We need to go to all the participants, which are many, because we not always are called, so they better make us be part of the study, but also not only we need to be there because there are few of us, but also we need to educate not just the nephrologists, but everybody else, the surgeons, the anesthetists, the intensivists, the ED doctors, so that we need to improve the situation and certainly let the family know that their child had acute kidney injury. The other aspect to consider is that this also occurs in areas of the world that are not the United States. So looking at the burden of disease in developing countries is very important. And because the burden has to do not only with the epidemiology of AKI, but also with the human burden of AKI. And insufficient education is clearly a key problem in this context. So we need to educate in multiple places. This is the effort of the 0 by 25 initiative, in which Etienne, here at the table, educated persons in 3 parts of the world, in Latin America, in Africa, and in Nepal, in India. And this is the group that participated in these efforts, and she did a marvelous work and with excellent results. She concluded with us that multi-center pilot study in low-resource settings demonstrates that a high frequency of kidney dysfunction in the communities associated with poor outcomes, and that a comprehensive educational program, she said, in low-resource settings utilizing point-of-care testing and protocol-based management, improved recognition and management is important. So this is a problem that is not minor. It's a major problem. This is when Malawi was destroyed by Cyclone Freddy, and AKI incidents secondary to inundation and cholera and multiple other situations occurs. We are happy to say that within the education initiatives, Etienne, Dr. Lewington, and I, together with Rolando Clor del Granado, we finally put together a manual for the management of AKI around the world, especially in developing countries. And this manual has been taken by the World Health Organization as the toolkit that the WHO will use as the key educational resource. So we are expanding, we're working, we're being effective, but there's a lot that we need to do still to improve the situation. And in this effort, we need to do it all together. The AKI now is a good example of interaction, putting together all the parts of the group, and also necessarily involving other players like industry and areas of investigation and the FDA, so that we have an opportunity to participate and to share our needs continuously. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's been a pleasure.